Good day, students. Welcome to Lautech Open and Distance Learning Center. I'll be taking UACT 306 Petroleum Accounting, Study Section 1, Introduction to Petroleum and Solid Mineral Accounting. Introduction. Introduction to Oil and Gas Accounting. Many countries converted to IFRS, which is the International Financial Reporting Standard, in 2005. And conversions are imminent for other countries such as Canada and South Korea, United States, Mexico in 2001. But Mexico in 2012 precisely. Japan has permitted the early adoption of IFRS by listed companies from year ending on or after 31st March 2010, and it finally announced its adoption in 2012. The United States of America announced later in 2012 the adoption of IFRS, and it was incorporated into the financial reporting requirement for United States domestic company. Accounting for oil and gas activities presents many difficulties as countries around the world adopt IFRS accounting approaches for affected companies may need to be reassessed. As countries adopt a single set of high-quality global accounting and financial reporting standards, there should be greater global consistency and transparency. Learning outcome for study section 1. On completion of this study section, you should be able to explain the nature and historical development of oil and gas accounting. You should be able to emphasize on oil and gas reserves, phases in oil and gas upstream operations. You should be able to describe the regulatory framework in the preparation of oil and gas account. And of course, we should be able to explain the SAS, IAS, and IFRS and the gap. Nature and historical development of oil and gas accounting. Oil and gas, the term petroleum is said to have been derived from two Latin words, petra meaning rock and oleum meaning oil. Eventually, the term petroleum came to refer to both crude oil and natural gas. While crude oil refers to hydrocarbon mixture produced from underground reservoirs that are liquid at the normal atmospheric pressure and temperature. Natural gas refers to hydrocarbon mixtures produced from underground reservoirs that are not liquid but gaseous at the normal atmospheric pressure and temperature. So hydrocarbons are compounds containing only the element of hydrocarbon and carbon which may exist as solid, liquid or gases. So petroleum, which we said it is comprised of crude oil and natural gas, we have explained that, define what crude oil is now and what natural gas. So both of them refers to mixture of hydrocarbon that are molecular in nature in various shapes and size of hydrocarbon and carbon atoms, found in small connected pore space of some underground rock formations. That's the formation of oil and gas, how they form, and how we are going to be accountable for this, for the distribution, for the production of oil and gas. We are looking at the phases in oil and gas upstream operations. We understand that we have phases in oil and gas downstream operations, but we are really focusing on the upstream operations. We have the upstream oil and gas operation. We have about 7 items here that they are phases of oil and gas upstream activities. From phase 1 to 5, collectively referred to as pre-production phase. if you look at it, we have pre-license prospecting, we have mineral rights acquisition, we have evaluation and appraisal, and we have development. So from phase 1, pre-license prospecting, sometimes referred to as pre-license exploration, typically involves the geographical evaluation of relatively large areas before acquisition of any petroleum right. That's the pre-license prospecting. Phase 2, which is the mineral right acquisition. A mineral interest is an interest in a property that gives the owner the right to share in the proceeds from oil or gas produced. Mineral interest acquisition involves the activities related to obtaining from the mineral rights owner the legal right to explore for development and produce oil or gas in a particular area. So typically the oil and gas company receives a mineral interest if the negotiations are successful. Now let's look at the third one, which is the evaluation. Evaluation activities are varied but are likely to include conducting topographical or geographical or geochemical and of course geophysical studies and exploratory drilling. So exploration is the detailed examination of an area for which a mineral interest has been acquired. Now let's look at phase 4, evaluation and appraisal. The evaluation and appraisal phase involves confirming and evaluating the presence and extent of reserves that have been indicated by various G&G testing and exploratory drilling. Exploration wells may have found reserves. However, evaluation and appraisal are often necessary in order to justify the capital expenditure related to the development and production of reserves. In other words, confirming that the reserves are commercial. Now, let's look at the development aspect of the upstream operation. After the formation of development plan, companies typically move into the development phase. This phase involves undertaking the steps necessary to actually achieve commercial production. Typically, this phase involves we have drilling traditional well necessary to produce the commercial reserves. 2, constructing platform and gas treatment plant. 3, we have constructing equipment and facilities necessary for getting the oil and gas to the surface and for handling, storing and processing or treating the oil and gas. The fourth one, we are looking at the constructing pipelines, storage facilities and waste disposal system. All of these 5 were categorized to be collective pre-production phase. Now we are looking at the last 2 one, which is the production and closure. The production and closure aspect, which we now refer that one to as production phase. From 1 to 5 they are pre-production phase, and from 6 to 7 are what? Production phase. Now the production phase involves the extraction of oil and gas from the earth and includes all of the related process necessary to make the produced oil and gas marketable and transportable. Production activities include lifting the oil or gas to the surface, gathering production from individual wells, and transporting it to a common point in or near the field. Feed treating and processing, that is removal of basic sediment and water, that is the BS and W, and separation of the oil and gas, and storage of production conclude the production activities. Phase 7, which is the last one, that is disclosure. At the end of the productive life of an oil or gas field, the site typically must be restored to its pre-existing condition. Accordingly, the closure phase include plugging and abandoning wells, removing equipment and facilities, rehabilitating and restoring the operational site, and abandoning the site in offshore operations, because we have the offshore and the downstreams operations. So in offshore operations, equipment must be removed from the platforms. Platform must be dismantled and removed, and any pipelines extending to or from the platforms must be what? Removed. That's are the phases in oil and gas upstream operations. We are looking at accounting principles and standards in the oil and gas industry. That is the establishment of gaps into the accounting treatment of oil and gas. IAS1, that is International Accounting Standard 1, define accounting principles as a body of doctrines commonly associated with theory and procedures of accounting, serving as an explanation of current practice and as a guide for selection of conventions or procedures where alternative exist. Now, accounting practices. The principle that impact most on oil and gas accounting principles can be classified into two categories, as we are familiar with those accounting concepts and accounting convention. Now, the accounting concept, we have entity concern, we have going concern concept, we have matching concept, we have historical cost concept, we have the money measurement, that is the value of money, and we have the realization concept. All these are the same concept that we use for the accounting treatment of oil and gas respectively. Now, the accounting convention. We have about 6 conventions for the treatment of accounting in oil and gas. We have conservatism, that is the prudency or the prudence. We have the materiality. We have consistency concept. We have substance over form, and we have objectivity or fairness. All these are conventions that must be followed when we are dealing with the treatment of oil and gas accounting. Accounting principle and standard in oil and gas industry using IFRS. Now, exploration and evaluation of mineral resources start when the legal right to explore have been obtained. Expenditure incurred before obtaining the legal right to explore is generally expensed. That is the treatment of IFRS. Now, an exemption to this would be separately acquired the intangible assets, such as payment for an option to obtain legal right. These are intangible assets. And now, accounting for exploration and evaluation. An entity accounts for its E&E, which we refer to exploration and the evaluation. Expenditure by developing an accounting policy that complies with the IFRS framework or in accordance with the exemption permitted by the IFRS 6. So the entity will have separated a policy under previous GAAP of capitalizing or expensing exploration cost. But specifically, IFRS 6 allows an entity to continue to apply its existing accounting policy under national gap for the exploration and evaluation. So the policy need not to be in full compliance with the IFRS framework, that is the IFRS 6 we are talking about, but an entity can change its accounting policy for the exploration and evaluation only if the change results in an accounting policy that is closer to the principle of the framework of that IFRS 6. So the change must result in a new policy that is more relevant and no less reliable, or more reliable and no less relevant than the previous policy. So the policy, in short, can move closer to the framework but not further away, that is, must at least in complement to each other. So the restriction on changes to the accounting policy includes change implementation on adoption of IFRS 6. So we can now look at the exploration costs are incurred to discover the hydrocarbon resources. Evaluation costs are incurred to assess the technical feasibility and the commercial viability of the resources fund. So all these are being defined and maintained or treated by IFRS 6. Now the accounting treatment of exploration and evaluation, which we have already explained, saying that the expenditure which has been capitalized and have a significant impact on the financial statement and reported financial results, particularly for entries at the exploration stage with no production activities, that is, those organizations or those companies that they are pre-production stage. We have method of accounting in the oil and gas industry. We have basically two methods. We have the one we refer to as SEM, and we have FSEM, which is the first one is successful effort method, and the second one are full cost method. Now, what is successful effort method? This is the method where all exploration costs, namely accurate cost, cost of geological and geophysical surveys, cost of dry hole, etc., are charged to expenses, while those that led to discovery of reserves are capitalized. So it gives due cognizance to the accounting concept of conservatism and prudence. On the other hand, the full cost method is a method in which all acquisition, exploration and development costs are capitalized, whether they led to the discovery of oil reserve or not. So proponents of a full cost method are of the view that finding commercially producible hydrocarbon is an overall objective that should not be evaluated on well by well basis. As such, all costs incurred are part of the cost of whether reserves are found. So because the good must support the bad. So why advocates of successful effort method held that any drilling effort that provides to be unsuccessful is a loss that must be expensed immediately. We have come to the end of this story section 1. I hope you do enjoy the series. Thank you for listening. See you in the next class. Thank you.